Kafka, Kafka, Kafka. Ever since Pearl dropped the lore bomb in 4.0 that all Stelleron Hunters have long since abandoned their paths, and now on top at the end of 4.4 with the added IPC broadcast of her being spotted with a mirror of transcendence, which, by the way, for those who don't know what a mirror of transcendence is, it's believed to be a piece of the Aeon of Beauty, Adrilla. So, with that being said, and these little lore bits being sprinkled upon our lovely meal and MSQ like sprinkles, I cannot help myself and I need to bite in and make a theory of what I believe our wonderful and beautiful space mommy once walked. So let's grab our finest coats, a nice drink, and together listen to a theory of what former path I believe everyone's favorite space mommy once walked. Kafka hails from a planet called Charogus 5, a planet that was contaminated by a Stelleron. Humans on this planet have no concept of the emotion of fear. Because of the contamination from the Stelleron, this lack of fear was dominating people with desire and pleasure, influencing their civilization and turning people into devils. Thus, Kafka herself became a devil hunter. Soon after this, Elio seeked her out, recruited her, and promised her the ability to feel fear at least once, an emotion completely unknown to Kafka. But this piqued her interest, and she joined the Stelleron Hunters, becoming Elio's second in command. But, Weiss, that still doesn't answer our question now, does it? Okay, I get it. I know it doesn't answer our question, but sit down. I'm getting to it. I'm getting to it. Relax. After all, this path was born from the Remembrance themselves, and could even have ties to the finality, the most mysterious Aeon, and how fitting for our lovely Stelleron Hunter. I'm talking about none other than the path of the Enigmata. Since the Enigmata is a path born from the Remembrance, I've always interpreted it as a path born from either the shattering of Foley or perhaps even the shadow of Foley themselves. Everyone is probably used to those cute little four leaf clovers, flowers, and jellyfish like symbols on multiple mimetic entities and characters that we've seen associated with the Remembrance or even the Enigmata. What if I told you that after a bit of searching, I even found that symbol on Kafka, but it's just extremely well hidden? On Kafka's jacket, at the back, right underneath all of that cool spider motif, right about here, you see it? I'll circle it for you right here. Or if you're not convinced, I will also leave Black Swan, Evernight, and Mr. Rekka for comparison. Now, I like Black Swan's design the most as an example because, in my opinion, it almost hints the remembrance coming from the Enigmata with that light blue and pink four-leaf flower in front of the black one. I love that cute little detail. Now, when it comes to her spider motifs, I really had to sit and think about it. Throughout multiple cultures, spiders are seen as weavers of fate, and it seems really fitting for the Stelleron Hunter's second in command. But what about the strings? Isn't that more kind of like the Path of Beauty, kind of like Aglaya with her golden threads? And let me tell you, I love the way you think, and that is completely and totally valid. Again, this is simply a theory, and that's what makes theories awesome and beautiful and fun. Speaking, I'd love to know your theories and your ideas on what path you think everyone's favorite space mommy abandoned. Let me know in the comments below. Now, back to those strings. Remember red threads or strings that appeared in Evernight's trailer? If you don't worry, I will leave some pictures or imagery from the trailer in here for you. I always assumed that the threads in both Evernight's and Kafka's trailer not only symbolized fate, but the neural pathways of the brain. Since Mythos tends to deal with people's cognition and not just memory, it seems really fitting if what they're meant to be doing is, messing with people's cognition, their memory, their interpretation, like breaking that down. It's such a cute little detail if that's what it's meant to be. Now, neural pathways are pretty much your brain's information highway. They're responsible for memories, perception, thought, emotions, and, a couple other things to list a few. Also, I've always thought for her element, and this is, again, just a little thought. I always thought it was thunder because jellyfish tentacles, yeah, I know they don't naturally produce electricity, but the feeling that you're left with when a jellyfish stings you is almost like a feeling some people described it of a shocking sensation or an electric like sensation, while others compare it to like a burning sensation. So I always like kind of interpreted it as okay, this is for the jellyfish for Mythos and the shock of, the jellyfish's tentacles on the go. But back on track to Evernight. Throughout her trailers, we would see these pools of black and magenta, seemingly eerily similar to Kafka's own character trailer, which is an interesting touch since magenta is not only a darker shade of pink, but on the color wheel it sits between red and blue, which tend to be the colors associated with remembrance. In Kefka's own trailer throughout her video, if you slow it down just a smidge, you can see an aura surrounding Kefka that's very similar to Mythos's color palette of the gold, the magenta, and the turquoise surrounding Kefka when the camera hovers around her as well. Not to mention that same four-leaf, four-flower motif with the kaleidoscope imagery is behind her, which is ever present in the Remembrance and Enigmata imagery. I find it super interesting that Space Mommy was seen with a black umbrella not only in her trailer, but has her crew, the Stelleron Hunters, posed with multiple umbrellas surrounding them in her splash art when she goes to ult. I've always kind of interpreted this as Kefka extending her protection around her fellow Stelleron Hunters. You're probably wondering why the umbrella is such a huge deal. I mean, after all, it's, let's be real, just an umbrella. And I mean, sure, you're right. It is indeed just an umbrella. But you're missing something important. An umbrella keeps you shielded from the rain. Or dare I say, shielded from Mythos's metaphorical fog of thought and rain of sensation. A similar reason as to why Evernight has a black umbrella in her motif as well, as I were to guess. So back on track to the strings, and I know I keep coming back to this, but this is me. This is a Weiss video. We're going all over the place. So let's take a look at the symbol for the Enigmata, which is a jellyfish with 4 strings coming from its main body. Then it's surrounded by a square with 4 rectangles coming from it. So, looking at it, it's a jellyfish with 4 strings coming from its body. And at first I thought maybe it was just a coincidence why there's so many 4s. And then I really had a look at all the rectangles and all the squares, and then I compared Kafka's design to it and really took a good look. And Kafka's strings and her rings that, seem to control her strings stem only from her 4 fingers. Almost as if it symbolizes the Enigmata and the Remembrance equaling a total of 8. So, multiple things on her outfit appear in 4s, and I know this is a little reachy, but at first I thought it was coincidency, but then with the strings I was like, it really does kind of fit, and that's weird. So we get the 4 strings on each of her fingers. Okay, then she's got 4 buttons on her pants. She's got multiple strings of 4 buttons on multiple sleeves. If they pattern up, I'll circle them and make a little graph of the things I spotted on her thing. That way it doesn't seem so silly and people aren't going on a I spy kind of where's Waldo situation. But hey, maybe you want that kind of situation, which, hey, maybe I'll leave 2 versions. I'll leave a version where I find all the 4s and a version where you can look for all the 4s just for added fun. Anyway, back on point and back to the strings. So let's take a look at the symbol for the Enigmata, a jellyfish with 4 strings coming from its main body. At first, I thought maybe it's just a coincidence. However, surrounded by 4 squares and 4 rectangles beneath those squares, Kafka's strings stem from her 4 fingers each, to symbolize the enigmata in the remembrance, equaling 8 total. Multiple things on her outfit appears in 4s, and even her sleeve and her fabric seems to drape almost eloquently off of her coat, almost in the same way that Evernight had multiple drapey or flowy designs in her outfit. At first, I thought this was a huge guess, and everything seemed a little reachy, if not very reachy. But then I really sat and thought about it. This is supposed to be mythos. It's supposed to be enigmatic. We're supposed to be left guessing. Now, 4 is important for the enigmata, and I had to really push myself back and remember that. What if those 4 strings on her hands or her fingers have to do with the 4 agents of Mythos, which is Mirage, Morph, Screen, and Riddle. Not to mention, most of the names of Kafka's abilities have to do with very night or dark-like themes. Her basic attack is called Midnight Tumult, her skill, Caressing Moonlight, and her ultimate, Twilight Trill. Remember, Mythos is known for the Dark Zone. The TLDR of the Dark Zone is pretty much basically Mythos's Aether playground. Timey-wimey things happen, time doesn't point towards entropy, and, the speed of light vanishes. Normal stuff on days that end in Y. That's totally sarcasm, by the way, if you didn't know. But don't worry, I plan on going into Mythos in a whole nother video in the future. Please look forward to it. And if that's still not enough for you, ooh, buddy, then saddle up, dear spectators. Do you remember when we played 2 Truths and 1 Lie? It was in the companion mission titled Letter from a Strange Woman on the Zanjo Lafu. Kafka was the one that wiped our memories, allegedly, before placing the Stelleron in our bodies on the Herta space station. It was also Kafka's spirit whisper that protected us from Constance or the Dahlia and her mental meddling back on the finality mission in Penacony. Speaking of Penacony, don't you think Gallagher's abilities were quite similar to Kafka's when he talked to the other members of the family, when he was able to alter the information of the stowaway to the members of the family so that Firefly could escape? Just seemed like an interesting little tidbit to me. Last but not least, Kafka was the one that was able to calm down Bleedy when he was suffering with symptoms of being severely Mara-struck. Keep in mind that being Mara-struck is allegedly the accumulation of memories that a person just can't process. Who better than someone following the path of the Enigmata with access to spirit whispers to take care and suppress his memories? There was a few other things I wanted to mention. I wasn't going to let you off that easily. Not to mention 4 words that appear in Kafka's trailer. MacGuffin, nonlinear structure, oneric structure, and Finn. Now listen, MacGuffin is the start of the story. It appears early in the first act to give the heroes a goal. It keeps the characters moving while creating conflict and action. The audience does not need to know what it is or how it works. It only exists to make the characters move. A nonlinear structure is storytelling technique where events are presented out of chronological order instead of following a traditional beginning to end timeline. It manipulates time using either techniques like flashback, flash forward, and can even start in the middle of an action. Oneric structure is a storytelling or artistic framework modeled on logic, flow, and the atmosphere of a dream. It replaces strict chronological realism with the emotional and visual patterns of the subconscious mind. And Finn? Well, darling, that's just the end now, ain't it? The last thing that puzzles me about Kafka was the butterflies on her outfit. Or perhaps they're moths. At first, I assumed this was a reference to maybe the butterfly effect, which is pretty much a concept that believes that even the smallest of actions have the largest and most unpredictable outcomes. The second I thought was maybe it's the symbolism of the butterfly itself, the changing of herself, life and death, and even in multiple cultures, they can symbolize souls, dreams, and even memory. Moths, however, symbolize transformation, intuition, the search for the truth, and spiritual messengers. The last thing I want to leave you with is the very first input that is left on the Aeon of Enigmata on the Astral Express databank, which reads: to stop questioning is to ask pouring rain to relinquish its faith in the glittering stars. Open yourself to the roaring river of metaphors, and you will find truth awaits, hiding at the end of the night sky in the swirling, rosy storm of a bygone age. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though, on not only Mythos, but Kafka, and what path do you believe our wonderful, gorgeous, and elegant space mommy once abandoned? Please let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, and till next time, guys. Bye!